This is going to be hopefully third and final video on my tips for preparing for technical interviews. Keep running out of memory. I apologize, the previous two video cut off, but I talk a lot and I actually have a lot to say about the subject, and it kind of keeps happening. So I apologize. Hopefully we'll be done with this video. If you haven't watched the first day, I recommend taking a look. First one is kind of long and important. It talks about the emotional mindset that I recommend having to get through the tech interviews, and the second one is not as important, but I kind of talk about my history with tech interviews, and that the fact that all technical interviews are all about algorithm and data structures questions, and encourage people to get a couple of books and read them to prepare, such as Cracking the Coding Interview and the Technical Interviews Exposed, both great books. Technical Interviews Exposed is smaller, so I recommend starting there. Anyway, third video, we get into nitty and gritty of technical interviews, and in the video that got cut off, I was gonna say that I was mentioned that I give slack to people who have been in the industry for a while and they are not sharp on the algorithms, I can't pronounce algorithm plural, and data structures, yeah, so I give them slack. But I was gonna say, honestly, the best thing you can do is just be sharp. Prepare the hell out of yourself so you look smart. And I used to hate technical interviews, and I used to hate them because I thought that I was being discriminated against, maybe because my school wasn't good enough, or maybe people see I was in the military and they don't like me. Maybe people see that I lived in Israel, they don't like that. All kinds of things stories I kept telling myself. But honestly, the reason they didn't pass me is because I wasn't shiningly answering those questions they're asking me. Doesn't mean I'm stupid, doesn't mean I'm a bad engineer. I think I have a pretty good track record with my employers actually being happy with my performance, but I'm not the guy who does great in interviews. It's something that I need to work on. It's just a fact of life, and I wasn't convinced that was the case until recently. And then when I really shared the story of what that convinced me, I was under the impression that something was wrong, and I was trying to do things to help me get recognized, discovered better, without having to go through like this pain of the interview and proving myself. And I thought maybe if I blog a lot, and I do projects and stuff like that, it will help me get hired without having to interview. And honestly, blogging and projects and probably making videos, although I'm not sure about that one, but blogging definitely helped me get in front of recruiters. It helped me get in front of interviews. So like the first step, as I mentioned in the first video, the first step is to get into the phone screen. Got much easier since I started blogging and I had some kind of GitHub and that sort of thing, because people can actually see that I've done something and that they're more interested to talk to me. I have people reaching out to me and offering me to interview, but it didn't bypass the step of interviewing, right? Like I still have to interview just like anybody else in order to get a job, and that's something I didn't realize. So all this extra stuff that I've done, honestly, I would have been much better off just practicing the interviews, because whatever extra attention I got without reaching out to recruiters from blogging and stuff like that, I could have just got by having a nice resume with relevant work experience and just sending to a couple of companies. So I enjoy blogging, I enjoy making videos, so in that sense this effort is not wasted, but it's definitely wasted in terms of helping my career. It helps me learn things, and that's great. It does help my career in that way, but in terms of getting better job offers from cooler places, it's done very little to help me, and it's basically was a waste of time in that regard. And I would encourage you to only do it if you actually get enjoyment out of it, not for any career advancement reasons. And number one thing that you can do by far is to prepare for technical interviews. By far, like nothing compares to that. And there's a story I want to share with you that convinced me that your school doesn't matter, and your background doesn't matter, and the color of your skin doesn't matter, and your gender doesn't matter. Nothing matters. But one thing that does matter is doing well in stupid, and they're kind of stupid and annoying, technical interviews that ask you about algorithm and data structures. Know your complexity by heart. Go home and practice. Memorize the hell out of it, just so it just comes off your brain, as it makes you look like a genius. Because as you saw me in the previous video, I didn't look that sharp trying to come up with time complexity for binary search tree, even though, you know, I kind of thought in my head before I was making this video, all that stuff. So you have to be sharp. You have to just know these little things as a back, like as the back of your hand, and this will go so far in terms of helping your career, nothing can compare. Anyway, the story I want to share that convinced me that there was no, if people, you know, the reason I didn't do well in interviews is because I just didn't do that well in interviews, and I wasn't looking great, and people who did better, and they going with those people. That's really is it. And you know, number one story that convinced me that was my friend who hadn't had technical degree. I have a master's in computer engineering. He has a master's in something else completely unrelated. He's been programming for about the same time as I have. You know, I speak English better than he does. I have a better degree. We have similar work experience, although he did more back-end work, and I've done full stack. But you know, he basically didn't have anything that fancy going for him comparing to me. But I knew from talking to him that he had much better success rate of getting the interviews. And then one time he got serious, and he wasn't even studying that hard, but he studied for a few months. He would go on a site called LeetCode, LEET code. I'll link to it for sure, and it's number one resource to recommend. That's why I'm throwing it out there first. Definitely go there and solve the problems. And he studied there. He solved the problem a day for a couple of months. He went and interviewed Amazon, Facebook, and Google, but he got offers from Google, Facebook, and Amazon. And that is freaking amazing, if you ask me. Amazing return on investment. Having these companies compete for you, and you know, getting a bidding war who can pay you more and that sort of thing, that is freaking amazing. And honestly, like, no blog in the world could have done it for him, and nobody cared. He didn't dress that fancy. Actually, he underdressed probably. He you know, he, like I said, he had nothing on his resume that really made him look that hot, but he practiced. He was really good at answering those questions, and he got through all three, and he did great. So, you know, that's the moral of the story. Go out there and practice. And if you're gonna be practicing, you can usually do it in different languages. I would recommend Java. Java is your language of choice if you have to choose one and practice with one. The reason for it is simple. Like, I actually have more experience in JavaScript than Python. Those are my languages of preference, and I probably will actually try to use Python in my interviews just because it just rolls out of my fingers, and maybe Scala. Yeah, but I would encourage, if you're starting out, to use Java, and because Java is viewed like as low-level language, which to me seems ironic, because most of my college coursework was in C and C++, where you actually have to do your own memory management, which is the hardest thing in my opinion. But Java takes care of that for you. But people view it as low-level because, you know, you have to specify types, and in a way it helps you on the interviews, make you look smarter. It makes you write more, but it also makes you look smarter, and kind of fills up the time a little bit as you write it out and look smart writing Java versus like few lines of Python. But that's kind of a joke, but there is a serious implication that is Java forces you to think slightly low level, right, by specifying types and not having a lot of magical things like list comprehension in Python. I don't want to go there, but basically Python gives you a little bit more magic, which helps in real life to be more productive, but it also makes it a little bit harder to do well in interviews. For example, sorting. I'm not sure if it's a great example, but in Python you just throw something and sort, and you don't even kind of think about the time complexity of that, right? It's easy to forget that's actually there's time complexity there, because you're not actually writing your own sort mechanism. You have to know the sort mechanism in Python, that sort of thing. So, it's easy when you use magic to forget to think about it. Like one time I interviewed and I was using JavaScript, and I just used native to find min or something like that, native method, and I didn't have to think about the time complexity of that. And you could have the same problem in Java as in Python, but it's a little bit easier to arrive to this proper interview, what they would expect to see solution in Java than it would be in Python. So if you have to choose any language, I would recommend Java. If you happen to know some language already, like I happen to know Python and like it more, There's no harm in sticking to that, as long as you understand the shortcomings and you can answer the questions such as, well, oh cool, you use this magical thing. Best of all, to volunteer the information yourself, but if you forgot to at least be able to answer, yes, I use this magical thing, but the actual time complexity of that is this, so if you add it all together, this is the final time complexity. Yeah, so the LeetCode is the website that I recommend. Do go there and practice the hell out of it. And from my experience, and I had to interview a lot of people at this point, you can just tell. Like I had two guys that were just like, they're just so sharp. Like they appeared so sharp. Like they weren't, I don't think they were much smarter than a lot of other candidates I interviewed. But I have no way of telling it. But these two guys, they just blew through my question like that. Time complexity like that. Test cases, blah blah blah. They just wrote everything out. And I want to Google them. I was curious, what's their secret? And sure enough, both of them showed up on LeetCode. Their profiles. There's other website that do that sort of thing. HackerRank is another one, so you can practice there. I mean, it doesn't really matter. You can go and solve everything coding. The Cracking the Coding interview book has a lot of questions and answers. The point is not where. The point is practice the hell of your interviews. Do by hand, arrive by hand, and how do you get the big of log n notation? Do it by hand many times, so it's fresh in your mind, so it just comes off right like this. One day somebody asked me to derive it, and while I can't derive it, it's kind of thing they have to like think and draw it out, and this kind of, it takes me a minute or two, and it look pretty bad. Don't be like me. Be better. Prepare the hell out of it, and you'll be great. You'll do great. So that's sort of the tips, and just final to wrap it up. When you actually go show up in the interview, if you didn't do your preparation, most likely you will be able to see from the question that it drives you towards one of these well-known patterns, and from there, so there's two. You can either tell right away the right approach, or you can tell at least brute force approach. If you can't tell right away the right approach, do the brute force. Look at the space time complexity and maybe space complexity of your brute force. Figure out what the shortcomings are, and then run in your head through all the algorithm data structures. See if one of them will help you identify a way to improve your performance. And usually, if you're kind of stuck, the interviewer, if they're a decent person, will help you, guide you through arriving more optimal solution. Simple things like always use dictionary instead of lists and that sort of thing for lookups, and because it's so much faster, that sort of thing. And finally, just kind of go back again, like I mentioned, given the problem, go ahead and write out a couple of test cases just to make sure you understand the problem. It look good for you, and will help you understand the problem and look like you trying to test your code. Go ahead and try to come up with optimal solution. If not, go for brute force. Don't worry, do the brute force. Figure out time complexity of that. Try to optimize it. Hopefully you can find optimization, optimize it, do the time complexity of that, be sure that's the most optimal solution. Then go ahead and, without being asked, run through the few test cases, just all the corner cases, make sure you test your code, make sure it works, and then after that the interviewer probably will take over and maybe ask some additional questions. But you don't want to solve something too quick. You just want to do the right amount of time for the problem. If it's something semi-challenging, to take a little bit longer. Yeah, and just be fresh in all your time complexity for all your major data structures, all the traversal, depth first, breadth, first traversal, tree traversal, obviously data, binary trees, graphs, linked lists, merge sort, all different sorts. Remember all this garbage. Just memorize it because it will come up and it'll make you look much better. So that's sort of my tips for getting through technical interviews. Hope you enjoyed it. Apologize for it being long, but there's a lot to say. But yeah, get the books. Don't take it personally. Don't overdress. Have fun with it, and practice. That's how you get to Google Hole, aka Carnegie Hall reference, if you get it. But anyway, yeah. Thanks for listening. Till next time.